We sat next to each other for lunch on the train to London, and George said, would I come out with him tonight?
At 80, Pattie Boyd, known for her iconic beauty, has finally opened up and revealed shocking new details about her love saga with Eric Clapton and George Harrison, including never-before-told stories of jealousy, infidelity, and heartbreak that will leave fans reeling. Join us as we unravel the details behind this tumultuous love triangle that made headlines. In Candid Reflections, Pattie shares the heartbreaks and the secrets behind the headlines, offering a glimpse into the personal struggles and passionate love affairs that shaped her life. During the 1960s, London was full of excitement, with a young model named Pattie Boyd at the center of it all. Boyd perfectly epitomized the era with her long, straight blonde hair and almond-shaped eyes. She quickly gained fame, gracing magazine covers and collaborating with renowned photographers such as David Bailey and Terence Donovan. In 1964, at only 19 years old, Boyd was chosen for a small role in the Beatles' first movie, A Hard Day's Night. She never thought that taking on this minor role would have a lasting impact on her life. While on the set, she captured the interest of George Harrison, the reserved member of the Beatles. Attracted immediately, Harrison was captivated by Boyd's beauty and charm and confidently proposed to her during their first encounter. Boyd was taken aback by his bold approach and declined, mentioning that she was already committed to someone else. Nevertheless, their chemistry was unmistakable. Boyd later recalled that after the day's filming, she believed she would not encounter Harrison again. She mentioned that she had ended things with her boyfriend, but upon seeing George again, his first question was about her boyfriend's well-being. She informed him that she was no longer in a relationship. During a photo shoot, Boyd was able to accept Harrison's dinner invitation when they met again. This signified the start of their whirlwind love affair. The intensity of Beatlemania added thrill to their courtship. Boyd discovered herself surrounded by loud supporters, private gatherings, and increasing popularity, but she and Harrison developed a strong bond, uniting over their mutual passion for Eastern spirituality and the counterculture movement. But how did this romance turn sour? What happened after they got married? Pattie Boyd and George Harrison got married on January 21st, 1966, and their marriage began on a positive note. George was considerate and frequently reached out to her through phone calls or letters while he was out on tour. Pattie recalled the enjoyable vacations and glamorous parties they had, feeling fortunate to be a young model married to a member of the Beatles in the vibrant world of swinging London in the 1960s. She treasured each instant they spent together, but understood that George had other women in his life as well. Nevertheless, a shift occurred following George's visit to India in 1968, during which he engaged extensively in meditation. Pattie talked about how George's interest in the god Krishna developed, especially his bond with young maidens. She mentioned that George started to crave a comparable spiritual lifestyle in which he was surrounded by young women. Pattie was taken aback when George revealed his wish to become a spiritual leader without any limitations on his connections. George's increased focus on meditation led to him being more isolated, serious, and frequently engaging in chanting. Pattie said that he would withdraw into his world and get upset if she attempted to talk to him while he was chanting. This consistent separation made Pattie feel alone and sad. After ringing in the new year at a party, Pattie and George came back home on January 1st, 1969, to discover Eric Clapton's girlfriend, a French acquaintance, at their residence. Eric had expelled her, but the girl, unfazed by the separation, became more intimate with George. Pattie began to feel that something was going on, and she approached George, but he brushed off her worries, labeling her as paranoid. Upset, she made the decision to depart and stay over at her friend's place. 6 days passed, and George contacted her to inform that the young woman had disappeared, prompting Pattie to go back home. She remembered feeling betrayed, unloved, and miserable. At the same time, Jane Asher, Paul McCartney's girlfriend, came back early from a trip to New York. Much to her astonishment, she discovered Paul at home in the company of another woman. Different from Pattie, Jane faced Paul, brought her mother, and together, they transferred all her possessions from the house, leaving Paul by himself. Pattie observed further alterations in George's conduct. He started using sandalwood, a fragrance he had never tried that she thought was meant to lure in women. He began working overtime at the Apple offices, frequently in the company of beautiful women, and occasionally did not return home. Every time Pattie questioned his actions, George refuted any wrongdoing, blaming her for being irrational, mean, and distrustful. Pattie expressed her increasing sense of powerlessness as George continued to exclude her. In order to stay busy, Pattie started accepting more modeling jobs and also joined art classes with a friend. One of her most notable achievements was a feature alongside Twiggy in an issue of Italian Vogue that spanned 5 pages. George had gifted her a camera during Christmas, prompting her to start taking photos with it. She also embarked on a new business endeavor with her sister Jenny, who was the wife of Mick Fleetwood. They jointly leased a space on King's Road to sell Art Nouveau antiques. They decided to call the stall Juniper, in honor of Donovan's song Jennifer Juniper, which was dedicated to Jenny while they were in India. Despite all of this, Pattie remained with George. But how did she become involved with Eric? What brought them together? And how did their romance bloom? Over time, Eric Clapton, who was a close friend of George Harrison, started visiting George and Pattie Boyd's home frequently. Pattie discovered Eric to be shy, in stark contrast to his bold onstage persona. During that time, Eric was in a relationship with French model Charlotte, who went on to be with Jimmy Page and have his first child. George had become more distant, so Pattie valued Eric's attention. Eric frequently praised her culinary skills, enjoyed her presence, and gazed at her in a manner that she found appealing. Eric became more intimate with the couple and eventually started dating Pattie's younger sibling, Paula. Paula and Eric fell in love, and Paula started living with Eric. Following their move to Friar Park, George and Pattie received a letter from someone signing off as E, expressing sadness and ending with "All my love." Believing it came from a fan, Pattie displayed it to George and their friends. In the evening, Eric disclosed that he was the author and admitted his affections for her. Pattie brushed it off as just flirting, not realizing how serious he was. Months later, Eric sent a second letter on a ripped page from Of Mice and Men, showing his sorrow and commitment. He asked if her pause was due to his imperfections and pleaded for her to choose to either embrace him or release him from the enchantment he was trapped in. Despite the heavy emotions involved, Pattie and Eric stayed friends. Eric gave her a pair of bell-bottom jeans, which later inspired his song Bell Bottom Blues. Their bond grew stronger after Eric performed Layla, a new song for her. Pattie was deeply touched, describing it as the most impactful song she had ever listened to, yet concerned that its actual message regarding her was clear. The song had a profound impact on Pattie, making it more difficult for her to resist Eric. That evening, at a gathering, Eric accompanied her outdoors. While they were conversing, George showed up and, upon seeing them together, approached Eric. Eric confessed to being in love with Pattie, which came as a surprise to her. She hastily departed with George. Eric started going to George and Pattie's house when George was not there, begging Pattie to leave her husband and be with him. He even went as far as threatening to start using hard substances if she turned him down. Pattie's rejection left Eric feeling powerless, and his unreciprocated love caused him to spiral into a prolonged period of addiction. At this time, he journeyed to Miami, where he recorded Layla, channeling his emotions into the music. Afterwards, he showed it to Paula, who was Pattie's younger sister and his partner at the time. Paula was devastated when she discovered that the song was a proclamation of Eric's feelings for Pattie. Paula was unable to deal with the revelation and decided to leave Eric's home, ultimately bringing their relationship to an end. Do you think Pattie would be able to free herself from this toxic relationship? And what impact would it have on her? George and Pattie had made arrangements to travel to Portugal for a vacation in 1973. Yet, on the day before their trip, George informed Pattie that he was unwell and proposed for her to cancel the vacation. Consequently, Pattie chose to travel to the Bahamas with her friend and 2 siblings instead. During her absence, George discreetly departed to Spain with Chrissy Wood, who was Ronnie Wood's wife. He informed Pattie that he desired to meet Salvador Dalí. When another friend found George sleeping with her, she confronted him, and he brushed it off, claiming she was just being paranoid. Ronnie did not seem to be bothered at all by his wife being with George, and thought it was amusing that they were going to visit Salvador Dalí. Nevertheless, Ronnie eventually developed a lasting friendship with Pattie. The situation escalated when Pattie found out that George was cheating with Ringo's wife, Maureen. Pattie and Maureen were good friends during the time of the Beatles. After coming back from a weekend visit to her mother's house, Pattie discovered pictures of George and Maureen together. Pattie found out that Maureen, who had been residing in their house, was wearing a necklace gifted by George. One evening, Pattie discovered them both trapped in a bedroom. George laughed as she began to bang on the door. Upon emerging, he mentioned that Maureen was exhausted and resting. Hurt, Pattie climbed to the top of the house and swapped George's OM flag with a Crossbones flag, briefly easing her emotions. Not long after that, Maureen began arriving at midnight, saying she was there to hear George play in the studio. The next day, when Pattie confronted her, Maureen appeared indifferent and disregarded her worries. Pattie contacted Ringo to inquire about the whereabouts of his wife and the reason for her absence from home at night. Ringo flew into a rage upon learning about it. While this was happening, Eric Clapton continued to try to win over Pattie, who was feeling unloved and betrayed by George, who kept denying any infidelities and insisted that Pattie was just paranoid and delusional. Communication with George became more challenging, leading Pattie to believe that he was seeking to terminate their relationship. George and Pattie were going to a party with one of George's friends on New Year's Eve in 1974. Nevertheless, Pattie remembered she had forgotten something and quickly went back into the building. Upon emerging, she found herself abandoned by them. She chose to go to the party alone in her car, but ended up trapped in the fog. On New Year's Eve, she embraced strangers while traveling on the road. Upon her arrival at the party, George nonchalantly mentioned, "Let's commit to getting a divorce this year." Ringo attempted to uplift Pattie's spirits by suggesting that she could work as a still photographer for him in a musical comedy project he was involved in. During a dinner gathering at Ringo's house one evening, George openly confessed to Ringo that he had feelings for his wife. Ringo turned angry, saying over and over again, "Nothing is true, nothing is true." Pattie departed the gathering and colored her hair red, yet she did not abandon George, despite the embarrassment. One day, when Pattie arrived home, she discovered George, Eric Clapton, and Pete Townshend engaged in a serious discussion. Eric pulled her aside and requested that she leave George in order to be with him. After a few weeks, Pattie eventually informed George that she was going to leave him. That evening, George joined her in bed and pleaded with her to stay. Pattie thought he looked unhappy, but by then it was already too late. Pattie joined Eric on his tour, at first enjoying the fantasy of being with him. Seeing the audience's excitement grow as Eric performed the opening riff to Layla brought her immense happiness. Nevertheless, the enchanting appeal of traveling diminished rapidly. Continual traveling, constantly using suitcases, staying in hotels, and early mornings following late nights had a negative impact. Tired of the never-ending pattern, Eric started drinking, and Pattie did the same. One evening, she entered a hotel room and discovered Eric and another man with dancers. When Eric was confronted, he shifted the blame, leading to another letdown that reinforced Pattie's increasing disappointment. In the end, she came back to Friar Park to retrieve her possessions from George. She felt burdened by guilt. George, kind and clearly upset, made her doubt her decision to leave him. Pattie observed distinctions between the two men. Although George was raised in a supportive household, Eric experienced a tumultuous childhood, mistakenly thinking his mother was his sister, despite both having humble beginnings. Pattie's family loved George, but Eric, who was a bit rough, did not leave the same impression. George was friendly and neat, whereas Eric, unless he was drinking, liked to be alone and left his things all over the place. Once during the holiday season, George unexpectedly showed up at Pattie's house. After years of being a vegetarian, she was taken by surprise when caught eating meat. Even though they had a nice evening together, she felt melancholy realizing George had celebrated the holiday by himself. On the other hand, life alongside Eric was characterized by celebrations and disorder. While Pattie prepared for a party one evening, Eric serenaded her with the opening lines of "Wonderful Tonight" on his guitar. Their love was intense for a short period, but Eric's excessive drinking resulted in him experiencing withdrawal seizures. When the tour continued, Eric excluded wives and girlfriends, leaving Pattie by herself at home. Throughout this time, Pattie made friends with a pair of twin models, one of whom would frequently spend the night. She woke up one morning to discover that Eric and her friend were not there. only to come back later and see them snuggled up on the couch. When Pattie approached Eric, he, drunk and uninterested, told her that she could see they were deep in conversation. He confessed his feelings for the girl and instructed Pattie to leave. Heartbroken, she headed to the upper floor, trembling with tears, contemplating the things she had given up for Eric. In search of comfort, Pattie decided to reside with her sister Jenny, who had come back to England following her breakup with Mick Fleetwood. Pattie contacted Eric a couple of days later to inform him she required some personal space. Eric confirmed that her friend was still present. Pattie went to Los Angeles with the determination to escape, feeling uncertain about her next steps upon her return. Despite everything, Pattie was still blinded by love and chose to marry Eric. What were the circumstances behind their marriage? And do you think it could have been any better than her previous marriage? One morning, Pattie was informed by her friend that Eric had called in the middle of the night and proposed to marry her immediately. He proposed that they tie the knot on Tuesday, right before his upcoming tour started in Tucson. Pattie, with hesitation, consented. The wedding was hastily planned, with only 3 days to get everything ready. Her sister and only a small group of friends were present. Afterward, Pattie discovered the entire wedding was a result of a wager made by Eric's friend. Eric's friend challenged him to appear in the newspaper, so Eric contacted the press and fabricated a story about a wedding. The news was released by the media, leading to the rushed wedding even before Pattie was notified. Following the ceremony, Pattie accompanied Eric on his tour in Los Angeles and initially appeared content. Less than a week afterwards, Eric instructed her to pack up her belongings and return home. Pattie quickly found out that the mutual friend Eric was secretly seeing had registered at the same hotel they were staying at. Even though the crew chased the woman away, Pattie's faith in Eric was completely destroyed. This woman kept popping up during their marriage, always reminding them of betrayal. Nevertheless, despite the pain, Pattie remained in the marriage. Eric and Pattie organized a large wedding party at their house, inviting all of their musician acquaintances, with the exception of John Lennon from the Beatles, who expressed regret for missing out on the event. The gathering is frequently considered as the nearest the Beatles ever approached to reuniting. Eric allowed wives and girlfriends to join the tour again, but Pattie chose not to accompany him on the trip to Milan. Following the tour, Eric asked Pattie to join him for dinner. The romantic gesture she thought it was turned out to be a painful revelation. In a packed restaurant, Eric admitted he needed to reveal something significant to her. He encountered another woman, Lori Del Santo, in Milan, and he believed he was also in love with her. Pattie was crushed, particularly because they had been attempting to conceive a baby via IVF. However, she carried on acting as though all was well and fulfilled her duties as a supportive spouse. Around Christmas time, Eric informed her that Lori was expecting a baby. He talked about Lori's beauty and the excellence of her photos, hoping Pattie would share in his joy. This news devastated Pattie, and she viewed it as the ultimate downfall of their marriage. However, even with the pain of heartbreak, she remained by his side for some time. Pattie departed to visit a friend in southern France, just as Lori's baby was expected. Eric phoned her to inform her that he had fathered a son named Connor. He anticipated Pattie's happiness, but she felt she would never have her child. At the age of 42, as her marriage crumbled, she came to the realization that she may never experience motherhood. Facing the painful truth, she wept uncontrollably. Shortly after, Bill Wyman, who resided close by, came to visit her friend's residence. Bill was concerned about the paparazzi outside his house because of a story regarding his connection with a girl he met when she was only 14 years old. Bill spent 10 days entertaining Pattie and her friends with his stories, keeping them laughing. This improved Pattie's well-being, and she came back home with more strength. Nevertheless, Pattie reached her breaking point when Eric resumed drinking and proposed for her to assist in raising his son with Lori. Even with ongoing IVF procedures, they were never able to become pregnant. Pattie declared that she was divorcing Eric because she could no longer bear the heartbreak. After enduring all these heartbreaks, do you think Pattie could ever truly recover? During her divorce, on her 43rd birthday, Pattie was still not sharing a bedroom with Eric and was sleeping in a separate one. One morning, he angrily entered her room and yelled at her for not wanting to please him in bed, accusing her of not being a good wife. He angrily tossed her things out the window. Fearful, Pattie ran away, abandoning all her possessions. She lived with friends until she could transition to a small apartment. Pattie contacted Eric's representatives for funds to reserve a spot, and they assisted her in locating one. During that period, she experienced total confusion, a lack of confidence, and felt completely lost. She was prone to tears and lacked a career or financial stability. Pattie came to the realization that she had to secure employment in order to begin making money. She reached out to former acquaintances, seeking assistance, but none of them had any opportunities for her. In order to deal with her pain, she made the choice to keep herself occupied and concentrate on securing a job. Pattie signed up for multiple classes and eventually came back to photography, a passion of hers for a long time. She started to enroll in classes, went to lectures, and became a member of the Royal Photographic Society. Gradually, she began to receive assignments from magazines. As she established a regular schedule, Pattie developed a bond with a longtime acquaintance, Rod. She characterized him as distinct from George and Eric, despite their similar backgrounds and educations. Pattie had to live on her and acquire new skills for the first time ever. She was no more the wife of a model or musician, and she needed to reconstruct herself. Pattie overcame these obstacles by maintaining a strong bond with her family and friends. She was able to forgive her ex-husbands and maintained a friendly relationship with them. From time to time, Eric treated her to lunch, and on a particular day, he invited her to meet his son, Connor. However, Eric's call brought heartbreaking news. Connor had passed away. Pattie worried that this setback could lead him to relapse into alcohol or substance misuse. Later on, Eric disclosed that he had a daughter with another woman while they were married, causing Pattie to question everything. Approaching her 80th birthday, Pattie began pondering her remarkable life journey. She discussed the intricacies of her connections with George and Eric in interviews and in her memoir. Over time, she had accepted the pain from her past. She talked about forgiveness for herself and the men who had harmed her. Pattie thought that if Jane Asher had found Paul with another woman, she would have reacted in a similar way. She was prepared to advocate for herself and insist that George remove the other woman from their home. She wouldn't have permitted any disrespect towards herself. However, Pattie stated that she would not have chosen Eric over George. She was willing to defend her marriage. Pattie reflected on her lack of confidence and how each act of unfaithfulness and drunken anger lowered her sense of self-value. She also pondered her parents' decision to abandon her during her childhood, resulting in her being raised at a boarding school in Kenya. She witnessed a repeated cycle of neglect and infidelity that mirrored her childhood experiences. In spite of it all, Pattie claimed she was happier than she had ever been. She had achieved peace through understanding and embracing herself. She kept pursuing her photography and had her work showcased worldwide, all while being happily married. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.